The Timeshift.
Hello and welcome, I'm Chris Hall and this is The Timeshift, my sci-fi fun fest, and it is great to have you with me as always. Now today is a most momentous occasion indeed, as today I'm going to be talking about the final episode of Series 8 of Doctor Who. Big deal here, ladies and gents, and needless to say, because I'm talking about the final episode of a series, this video is going to be spoiler heavy! So if you don't want this episode spoiled for you, it's probably best to switch off now. Now this video is going to be a little bit longer than usual. I say a little bit, it's probably realistically double the length of the usual Timeshift episode. There is a good reason for this. It is the final episode of a series that I'm talking about, so I need to talk about a little bit more than it was alright, as I tend to do. So with that said and done, let us dive headfirst into a death in heaven. Okay, so I just need to say this as a little bit of a disclaimer before we get into the nitty gritty of this episode. I enjoyed it. Okay, from a Doctor Who fan, for them to say that they enjoyed an episode of Doctor Who, I think may seem a little bit weird, but I have to say it because what I'm about to talk about is fairly negative. But it's stuff that I just need to get off my chest because this was a fun, enjoyable episode. It was really intriguing, had a great bit of mystery to it, very thrilling with a great bit of pace towards it. However, there was a few problems within it, which, to be honest, didn't bother me at the time. It's only going back and thinking about it that I suddenly realise, oh, bugger, that doesn't really make much sense, does it? I'm going to refer to my notes a fair whack during this, I have to say, so if I do look away, I do apologise for that. It's just because I've spent a great deal of time working on these. So one of the first things that kind of to me was the fact that there doesn't really seem to have any great consequence, anything that happened within the episode. Which, yes, I've said that about previous episodes, but with this one, it feels a little bit more stark given the fact that last week's episode was so dark, so twisted, but at the same time funny and had a great build and atmosphere to it. And of course it suggested that something big and massive was going to happen all around the world, given the fact that there's an army of Cybermen that have been building up using dead people for God knows how long. With this one, it didn't really go anywhere from that, and the whole episode as itself just ground to a halt as soon as they got into the graveyard. And at the end, it just kind of amounted to all the Cybermen being rather confused, just floating away and exploding, and that was it. Ta-da! 12 weeks of development, or however bloody long this has been, and ta-da! It amounts to really nothing apart from a somber moment, which I'll get to momentarily. It really confused me, the fact that they did nothing. The Cybermen did nothing. They built up their army, and then they blew themselves up. Of course, this was under the control of Mr. Pink, so yeah, but still. The Cybermen did nothing. They didn't go on a rampage. They didn't become this great unstoppable silver horde, converting people to Cybermen and causing all a manner of a ruckus around the world. They really did nothing. They rose out of the grave, wombled and wobbled about for a bit, and then disappeared. The whole scene in the graveyard did annoy me because it did bring the entire episode itself to a screeching halt, and it just turned into this great big debate about emotion and love, and this is an episode where love where love wins the day, and about how two people, when they're really in love, can overcome anything. Bloody hell, it's like watching an episode of Sailor Moon, for crying out loud. Love will save us! With the power of love, we can do anything! Yeah, so that entire conversation that we had for nearly 10 minutes about whether or not we should switch Mr. Pink's Cybermen inhibitor on, and the fact that if we switch on, yeah, we'll know what they're doing, but on the other side, he's going to kill everybody. Turns out to be, oh, we'll switch it on, and nothing. He hugs Clara, and then he pretends to be a soldier, and then he whizzes off into the sky, kind of like Poochie at the end of that episode of The Simpsons. I must go now, my people need me. I mean, I love the episode, but it just gets really difficult to talk about it when you have these startlingly bizarre moments. Another issue, once again relating to Mr. Pink, was the end bit where he was in the wibbly wobbly Photoshop After Effects glowy wibbly wobbly bit. I mean, okay, am I the only one that was confused by that? At what point was it ever said that this device would allow him to come back from the dead? I mean, where was he coming back from? Was he coming back from the Nethersphere? Because if he was, how would that be physically possible? Unless I'm mistaken, isn't the Nethersphere just effectively, like they said in the first episode of this two-parter, it's like a Gallifreyan hard drive. So in that regard, everything that he's storing within is data, or in this case, consciousness. Consciousness is mind, it is effectively the soul. So it holds no biological material. So to transfer the consciousness from the Matrix into the real world would do nothing, as it holds no biological material with it. It is just the soul, or whatever that quantifies within Doctor Who land. And yes, the fact that the bracelet that you use did belong to Missy, but Missy was biological in the first place, so her hopping between these two dimensions wouldn't affect her quite as much, as she still has a physical body. The small child that Mr. Pink saves has been dead for presumably a good couple of years. So we've got a child who, if he was to go from the Matrix to being alive again, would either be in the body of a Cyberman or within his decaying, rotting body. Which of course is a brilliant thing to think about during a family TV show, but that's what it would translate to. Is that whole sequence there just so that we can have a happy ending? I think it is. However, if it was just a case of for it to be a happy ending and for us to have a bit of closure for that whole entire thing, why is it that after then we have the sad bit? We have the bit with Clara and the Doctor saying goodbye, but both lying through their teeth to one another. Clara saying, "Oh yeah, Mr. Pink, Danny, he's back, and you know how he is. He is around now. Oh God, I'm so lonely." And the Doctor saying, "Oh yeah, I found Gallifrey, and everything's okay. I'm gonna go back to Gallifrey and have fish and chips. Hooray! Oh God, I'm so lonely." And the two of them part ways, and it's very sad and depressing. If the whole thing of the child coming back was supposed to be a happy ending and joyous closure to it, why is it do we then have the sad bit after it? Because we go sad, happy, sad. So that entire moment where we're supposed to be happy kind of feels very out of place. Of course, if I had my way, I'd just edit out that entire sequence with the child coming back, because it holds absolutely nothing. It's a child which had absolutely no development in the series at all whatsoever, bar the appearance last week and the appearance in the flashback last week. So he's just there, and now he's alive somehow. I don't know, because I may have forgotten about it. If you know how this child came back from the dead, comment section please, it would help me no end, but it then kind of feels weird. And another thing that feels weird that's not really established or explained is how Missy came back. The last time we saw Missy, when she was the Master, was at the end of David Tennant's time as Doctor Who, and he was cast off into that weird dimension in which Gallifrey is right. Here's a question for you, and I've been racking my brains all day trying to figure this out. Is the Gallifrey that featured in David Tennant's last adventure as Doctor Who, is that Gallifrey the same Gallifrey as the one that the Doctor saved at the Christmas special last year? Because if it is, one, the Doctor doesn't want to save them, as they're fairly nasty people. They tried to destroy the Earth so they could bring Gallifrey back. But if it is, then the Doctor would know that Gallifrey still exists. So if Gallifrey did exist before, the whole thing of making Gallifrey exist again in the Christmas special doesn't work, because it already existed. So, but if they made Gallifrey exist in the Christmas special, then that means that the Gallifrey that we saw... Oh God, this is bloody confusing. Some kind of explanation how the hell the Master came back would have been grateful, but we didn't get it. And to be honest, I don't think they ever are, which pisses me off no end. We need to know these things. You can't just say, oh well, it's the Master. The Master always comes back. The Master always finds a way, because we need to know. If Missy came back, then it's through some kind of wibbly-wobbly timey-wimey space thing, which either means that she came back somehow when the original Gallifrey is somehow around, or through the alternate version, if it is an alternate version of Gallifrey, or something. How does this work? Or is it the fact it's such a mumble mess that they're not going to explain it because it's too bloody difficult? I mean, I just can't get my head around it. I honestly cannot. Of course, as an episode as a whole, I did enjoy it. It's just that within it, there's just some very confusing, poorly explained moments. Of course, I'll talk about the episode as a whole in a little bit more depth in the overview section. But for now, let us take a sideward glance at the performances. Now, we're going to talk about Missy first and foremost, and it pains me to say this, but I didn't like her. I know that might seem like a big thing, but I didn't like her. I mean, last week I thought she was great and amazing, but this week, properly as the Master, full time, no mystery to it or anything like that, she's definitely the Master, I wasn't a fan. Now, the problem that I have with Missy and the Master is the fact that there's nothing really threatening about it. It's like we've had previously. This Master and the previous Master were both wacky, crazy, evil geniuses, which I just don't find creepy or threatening at all. The Master, pretty much until recently, was this very cold, very calculating, very serious character. Someone who was, yes, crazy, but they weren't outwardly so. They weren't so extroverted, which aggravates me because I can't find someone dressed as Mary Poppins, floating along, both literally on the umbrella and of course pulling the airy-fairy poses. I can't find that terrifying whatsoever. Disintegration gun or tissue compressor, whatever the hell they want to call it now, or not, I just don't find that threatening. And at some points it was borderline pantomime. This may just be me not quite getting it, but I just hate the fact that the Master has gone from this cold, calculating bad guy to this pop culture spewing nutcase. It does remind me of the sole 10 seconds that I have watched of Sherlock. And all I saw of it was seemingly James Moriarty in what looked like a swimming baths with a gun saying, "Ah, Sherlock, I'm going to shoot you now." "Yes, I'm going to shoot you too, Watson." Which I just found utterly distracting. James Moriarty, and this is a different thing, bearing in mind I've not seen Sherlock by that whole 10 seconds thing, he's supposed to be this cold, calculating, insane, but still cold and calculating bad guy. Same with the Master. The Master is to Doctor Who what Moriarty is to Sherlock. It's someone who is, in very many regards, the antithesis of what they are. Someone who is evil, cold, dark and calculated, even if our Doctor itself is cold, dark and calculating. And so, to some degree you could argue that it is something of a contrast to our Doctor, in that we have such a wacky Master and such a reserved Doctor. We had the same problem last time when we had David Tennant's Doctor, who was this romantic, quirky, pop culture spewing Time Lord, with a Master who was wacky, quirky and pop culture spewing. Look, I just long for the day in which we have a Master who is a genuine threat, who isn't a threat just because they're the bad guy and nothing else. This also is an episode which did ruin Mr. Pink for me. The whole ending sequence for him was very emotional and very sad, and I'm very, very sad to see the character go, because up till now I really liked him, and I wish that he had become a proper companion, rather than effectively just soap opera fodder for this whimsical soap opera in space. He's a character, I think, whose history as a soldier could have really played off against the Doctor in a way that would have allowed us to go in a different direction with the series. But sadly he's been killed off now, and we're never really going to get that. Instead we'll just have the Doctor once again being rude towards soldiers, and the soldiers themselves in Doctor Who being gun-loving lunatics, as they always bloody well seem to be. The problem that I had with his performance this time round was that the whole big dilemma to this episode is whether or not to switch on his emotional inhibitor, something that will stop him feeling emotions and just turn him into a cold, lifeless Cyberman, someone who emits no emotion whatsoever. Seemingly, that was switched on from the very beginning of the episode, as he had no emotion whatsoever. You could argue it's because he's a reserved character. He doesn't quite wear his heart on his sleeve as many of the characters in the show does. But he seemed just rather wooden in a strange kind of way. There was no emotion there. Even though he was supposed to be sad, he just kind of looked like a child who'd been told off by their parents. And this is supposed to be a big, dark, sentimental bit, but he's got no emotion. So when they're debating whether or not to switch his emotions off at all, really it would have made no outward difference to him other than the fact he's going to kill people because of his Cyberman programming, which he didn't do because of the power of love. Well, everyone else in this episode was great. The Brigadier's daughter, Kate, I believe she is. I thought she was great. I'm glad they didn't kill her off, even though I found the whole explanation as to why she wasn't killed off a little bit odd. Yeah, the Brigadier, everyone's one of the few characters that were human and a soldier that we really, really loved in the classic series, who was the best non-companion that we had in Doctor Who. Great, brilliant character. What we're going to do to give him a proper final send-off, since we didn't really have the chance to the first time round, we're going to turn into a Cyberman. And of course, Cyberman Brigadier killed Missy, seemingly. Of course, some people are debating whether or not that is the case, because when she was shot, she disappeared in a blue light, whereas before, whenever someone got shot, they disappeared in a red light. So obviously, as it's a different colour, it means that it's a different circumstance, and she's not dead. Of course, I've seen a little bit of a clip, I don't know if it's in the Doctor Who extra, of Stephen Moffat saying, "Oh yeah, when Anthony Head," or whatever his name is, the guy that played the Doctor, not the Doctor, the Master during the 80s. "Oh yeah, when he died, he'd die definitely and definitively during the Colin Baker and Peter Davidson years, but then, he'd come back and just say, 'I escaped.' So don't rule out Missy returning." You see, here's the problem, Mr. Moffat. You need to explain things. You really do, especially within a science fiction TV show. I know some people are debating whether or not we can still call this a science fiction TV show, given how many times you stick the two fingers up at science as a general rule, as well as logic, reason, and common sense. But still, you need to explain these things just for the simple fact it would make your stories infinitely better if we knew how Missy managed to escape from Gallifrey, if we knew how the hell the little kid came back from the nether sphere, even though at that point he would only be a consciousness, how the bracelet allows you to go from the afterlife to the current. If we knew these things, it would make us enjoy the episode. Otherwise, we just walk from it just scratching our heads, wondering what the hell we just watched. Of course, I didn't do that at the time. I did that subsequently to do this. Of course, to be honest, even before I was writing this, I was thinking of, oh, there was that. And it didn't work. Oh bugger. Look, I enjoyed this episode. It may not sound like it, but I did. Even though it is a mess. It won't be remembered as one of the great episode story thingies, but at least it's a better way to end it than what I worried that it would be, which would be, oh, the Doctor slipped one of those dream patches on Missy and everything we've seen thus far has been a dream. Which would have been aggravating. I would have seen it coming, but at least to a certain degree that would be a little bit more coherent. But of course, what do you think? What did you think about this final episode of Doctor Who? Did you think it was good, great, or are you just incredibly indifferent to it? Leave a comment in the comment section below. Right, I'm going to do a question now. Now, this is a question that was left last week, and I apologise because I'm going to get the name wrong. It's from Fina Smicky, and I apologise, but reading is not my strong point. And they ask, or as they say, "I'm a lurker of your videos and like to nerd out. So do I. Good match." Basically, what are your thoughts on Moff missing out on opportunities of introducing either the Rani or Valiard? I like the idea of a female master, but it happened too soon. Bring back another past villain! Or whatever it is at the end of it, I turned away when I shouldn't have done. But this is my thought on that. I do agree with you that I think that Moffat missed out on a great opportunity to bring back the Rani. As much as I enjoyed the female master, even though this past episode wasn't that good, I kind of feel it odd us having a female master when we already had one in the form of the Rani. I'm going to refer to my notes now. The thing about the Rani is that in her original run in the original series, she wasn't really used that well. She just felt a little bit like a stopgap so that we weren't overusing the Master. And as such, her character wasn't really developed or grown. We don't really know much about her or her history. So if they were to bring her back, it would be a great opportunity for whatever writer's in charge of the episode, as they can really go to town on her. They can write a great origin story for her, or to develop her character in ways and means which A, they can do whatever they want, and B, take the character in new directions, or all directions, whichever direction the world is their lobster. And of course it won't be as difficult to explain her back into reality quite the same way as it would be the Master. Plus, the other problem is that the Master hasn't really been in this new run of Doctor Who that frequently. So the whole twist of the Master now being a lady might not have the same impact on on new era Doctor Who fans in the same way it may do classic Doctor Who fans like myself, and presumably you, because you mentioned the Valiard. And let's face it, that's from the dark age of Doctor Who. And if you know about the Valiard, you're a long time fan of Doctor Who. Speaking of the Valiard, do I think it was a missed opportunity to bring the Valiard back? I think it's a missed opportunity. However, bringing the Valiard back is a big one. I mean, this is a big Doctor Who-y thing to bring the Valiard back, and it wouldn't be an easy one, because the Valiard is a very taboo subject, seemingly, within the writing for Doctor Who. I can't remember exactly what company this bit's about, but I think it's Virgin Media or something like that, who explicitly told their writers, whether it was for audio players or for books, not to write about the Valiard, to just not do anything with that character at all. So as such, I'm kind of curious as to whether or not that's the case of the main series or not, or it may just be the fact they've not really gotten around to reintroducing the Valiard or not. I think it would be a great little twist to bring the Valiard back, because if I remember correctly, the Valiard came into existence because the Doctor extended his lifespan beyond its natural means, which has happened. Let us not forget the Christmas special from last year. Matt Smith's Doctor was at the end of his regeneration cycle, and because Gallifrey sent him some wibbly-wobbly time juice, he came back and restarted his life cycle, so that should signify that the Valiard has entered existence now, and is probably somewhere out in the universe. So bringing him back would still be relevant, and would still be a great twist. However, I think it's a bit too big. And given that we've just had a two-parter, which, let's be honest, in my opinion, was a little bit limp towards the end of it, you need a showrunner and a story which has to be big, phenomenal, epic, practically stand-alone episode quality. The kind of episode that you can just say, oh, you've never watched Doctor Who? This is what Doctor Who is about, and just let them watch that episode, or two-part, or whatever it is, and then go, oh my god, I really like Doctor Who, it looks awesome now! Which, you know, which you would need an episode of that quality. And I don't know, maybe that is the story that we get Peter Jackson to direct, because Peter Jackson really wants to direct an episode of Doctor Who, so maybe that's the one he can do. It would be interesting getting a guy who one of his movies has the Guinness World Record for the most amount of blood, fake blood used in a movie, which being brain dead or dead alive, depending on whereabouts in the world you're from. You know, it would be great to have him to direct Doctor Who, and maybe direct the Valiard episode, because it would be huge and epic, and it would have to be huge and epic, otherwise it simply wouldn't work. So yeah, I do agree that it was a missed opportunity to bring back those two Time Lords, or Time Lord and Doctor Who spin-off Time Lordy creature, because the Rani would make sense, would take less working into the story to bring her back, and would be a gift to whoever's writing her, because they can do whatever they want effectively, or make it a little bit more classic or new, or combine the two and create a great new character effectively. Or the Valiard, it's relevant and still would work given where we are in the series. The Rani as a character is long overdue, and I think she should be brought back at the most available opportunity, but one which makes sense and they're not going to balls up. Right, so that's question time done and dusted. And well, that's pretty much it for now. Next week is going to be my final time shift on Doctor Who, realistically until the Christmas special. Next week I'm going to be talking about the series as a whole, my highs, my lows, and the points that I really wish didn't happen. Granted, if you've been watching these videos, dramatic pause, granted if you've been watching these videos for quite some time, you can probably guess which episodes I really wish didn't exist. But in any case, I hope you can join us next week. If you have any questions about Doctor Who, or anything you'd like to ask me, my opinions on a certain subject, as was just done previously, leave a comment in the section below, and whatever web zone you're watching this on. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.